Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well this evening. I would just like to say welcome to the webinar today, and thank you for giving up some of your time this evening to be part of this webinar. My name is Tom Eric, and I am the senior user for the Shrewsbury Property Flood Resilience Scheme. The webinar today is to provide you with information on the funding behind the scheme, what PFR is and the products available, the process for from survey to install, and to meet the team delivering the project. Watertight International and JBA Consultant will be talking about their roles later in the presentation. Before we start, please note that you're able to type questions relating to the Shrewsbury Property Flood Resilience Scheme into Zoom at any point during the presentation, and these will be answered at the end. Next slide, please. The Environment Agency has identified a number of properties that are deemed to be at high risk of flooding in the Shrewsbury area. Both Shropshire's local flood risk management strategy and Environment Agency's flood risk management plan seek to work with local communities to raise awareness and increase their preparedness for flooding. Properties have been identified in the Coptham area, which are at risk of flooding from the Radbrook, and in Mill Brace, where properties are at risk of flooding from small ordinary water courses. Please note that we are aware that there are other locations at risk of flooding in Shrewsbury from the River Severn, but we currently have colleagues working on proposals for that separate to this project, which is why they haven't been included in this webinar. The Environment Agency has successfully secured flood defence grant and aid funding from DEFRA and local levy funding from the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee for a property flood resilience scheme in the area. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to talk about where we've come from in terms of the scheme. In 2018, the Environment Agency identified a number of communities across the West Midlands and Southwest where properties were eligible for PFR. The Shrewsbury PFR scheme forms part of a wider package of works in delivering PFR to around 600 properties across the West Midlands. Due to the scale of the project, we had to split it into phases. Phase 1 and Phase 2. Shrewsbury forms part at the beginning of Phase 2. Between the summer and winter 2020, the Environment Agency developed and submitted a full business case to obtain flood defence grant and aid and local levy funding to deliver the Phase 2 of the PFR package. In spring 2021, we were given confirmation that we'd gained full funding for the project following a successful business case. In the summer 2021, Watertight International were given the instruction to proceed with Phase 2. Watertight International were awarded a contract to deliver the PFR package prior to starting Phase 1 using the Environment Agency's PFR framework, which is a national list of approved suppliers that meet industry recognised standards. JBA Consultant are assisting Watertight with property surveys and will be acting as an independent auditor of completed works. Next slide, please. As mentioned previously, properties deemed at high risk of flooding have been included in this scheme. The scheme will offer a basic package of measures. Watertight will explain later about these in the presentation, which will hopefully be funded by the scheme, which will be fully funded by the scheme, sorry. However, measures such as tanking will not be included due to the expense. A contribution is only generally required when the homeowner decides to upgrade measures for aesthetic purposes only, so from a PVC flood door to a composite door. The options will be discussed with the homeowner during the works inspection survey to best suit the property and the needs. The survey is fully funded by the Environment Agency, and there's no obligation to take up PFR measures after the initial survey. If you have any questions or doubts to any part of the process, please get in contact with myself or Watertight, who will be happy to help. The obligation to take up PFR measures only really begins once the homeowner has signed the agreement, and this is done when the homeowner is fully aware of the measures proposed and in a few cases aware of any additional costs. Next slide, please. So this slide, I'm just going to talk through basically from start to finish of the process from survey to installation. So all eligible homeowners have been contacted via letter. We have engaged on the scheme through letters, door knocking, and hosting this webinar. Usually we would normally have a drop-in session in person, but we can't do that due to COVID. The next step is to sign up for a property survey and details works inspection survey. If you've not already done so, you can do this via Shrewsbury at watertightinternational.com. Please send an email with your name, telephone number, and home address. If you're a tenant, please include your landlord's details. We'll have that email address up later at the end of the presentation. Watertight or JBA will contact you to arrange a time slot to carry out the survey and detailed works inspection survey. This will assess the flood risk to your property and which PFR measures are most suitable for you and your property. Surveys will take place on the 18th, 19th, and 20th of October. The property flood resilience recommendations will be discussed and agreed with the homeowner during the survey, and after this, they will be designed and costed. Following this, property survey reports will be issued to the homeowner. Contact will be made following the report to answer any questions and finalise bespoke PFR measures for your property. The proposed measures will be sent from Watertight to the Environment Agency, and if applicable, they will be proposed to you as part of the homeowner agreement. The agreements will be sent to the homeowner to be signed by each person on the property deed. Once we have received the signed homeowner agreement, Watertight will be able to order the products. Without the homeowner agreement being signed, we will be unable to move forward. So please do not hesitate to contact either the Environment Agency or Watertight if you have any questions in regards to the homeowner agreement. Our aim is to ensure you fully understand the PFR measures proposed before you sign and return it. What we don't want is for residents to sit in silence and delay returning the agreement. There's no obligation to agree to the term measures. There's approximately an 8 to 12 week lead-in time for project manufacture, after which Watertight will contact you to arrange a date for installation. Installation generally takes place over 1 to 2 days. Following installation, one of the project team will visit to provide a training on how to use the PFR measures, and you will be provided with a handover pack, including fitting instructions, storage, future maintenance plans, and warranties. JBA will then undertake an independent post-installation flood risk audit to ensure that the agreed measures have been installed and they have been installed appropriately. Next slide, please. So there will be one works inspection survey on your property with one team member from each of the JBA Consultant and Watertight International. JBA Consultant are involved in 2 stages. The first stage is to survey the property, identify flood risk, and discuss potential entry points with the residents. And the second stage will be at the end to provide an independent post-installation flood risk audit. Watertight International will work alongside JBA to identify suitable PFR measures and discuss and agree options with the homeowner. And the Environment Agency will provide support and local knowledge to JBA and Watertight. Hopefully that gives you a good idea on how and why the scheme is being delivered. I will now pass it over to David from Watertight, who will go into more detail about PFR measures.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. And hello, everyone. I'm David Christie. I'm a project and technical manager from Watertight. So just this evening, I'll talk through a brief summary of what I'm going to talk about. There'll be an introduction to Watertight. I'll talk about Watertight's experience within the PFR industry, property flood resilience, PFR, what it actually is. There'll be an outline of the Shrewsbury PFR scheme. I'll talk through some examples of PFR measures and the choices available to you. And there'll then be a section of frequently asked questions. And at the end, I'll be thanking you for your time and asking you to get your survey booked if you haven't already. So next slide, please. So just an introduction to us as Watertight. We trade as Watertight. We're actually registered as Flood Control NI Limited. We're the leading providers of property flood resilience in the UK to the Environment Agency and other LLFAs. So as Environment Agency PFR framework providers, Watertight design, source, install and maintain bespoke and innovative property flood resilience solutions. We work nationally with offices in Runcorn, which is in Cheshire, and in Bangor, which is Northern Ireland. So Watertight deliver all property flood resilience, taking into account the person, the property, and the flood, with a solution designed and delivered within the scope of the industry code of practice. So next slide, please. So just a bit about our experience in PFR. The Shrewsbury PFR scheme has been procured under the Environment Agency's Property Flood Resilience Framework. So the table shown on the slide there demonstrates our experience in the industry, the schemes that we've been working on, the number of properties that we've delivered. And what we're trying to say is, please trust us. Collectively, Watertight, the Environment Agency team, and JBA will work collaboratively to make this scheme a success for everybody involved. Next slide, please. So property flood resilience, PFR. So what is it? So whilst engineered flood defences, flood warnings and upper catchment measures can make an improvement, it really is essential for resilience to be built into the individual properties. So property flood resilience is really designed to allow people to live with the risk of flooding. You can never really eliminate the risk of flooding, but you can reduce the risk of water getting into your property and further reduce the impact if it does get in. So property flood resilience includes any measures to reduce the risks to people and properties, enabling households and businesses to reduce flood damage, speed up recovery, and reoccupy flooded properties faster. It will also potentially help you to obtain flood insurance more easily and affordably. Property flood resilience is really split into resistance measures, which would be, for example, flood barriers and flood doors, which are designed to keep water out of the property. Property flood resilience also covers recoverability measures, which are specifically measures, product or construction methods that reduce the damage caused if water does enter a building and allow you to recover more quickly after a flood. That would be things like raising electrical sockets or tiling floors. So next slide, please. So just an outline of this Shrewsbury PFR scheme. So the Environment Agency have identified that your property is at risk if they've contacted you. You'll be able to book an appointment for flood risk assessment. This is free. We are aware that many of you will have already done this within this scheme. If you haven't, please do get in touch and organise a survey. So JBA will carry out the flood risk assessment, and Watertight will carry out a works inspection survey at the same time to look at suitable PFR measures for your property. We'll discuss all the options available to you and then put that solution forward to the Environment Agency for their approval. As part of this process, you will receive a homeowner agreement, which is between you as a homeowner and the Environment Agency as the funders of the scheme. If you sign and return the homeowner agreement, we will then procure the measures and look at booking installation dates for you. The handover process will entail showing you how to install, store, and maintain the measures, and at that point, we will then also supply the warranties for all products provided. The sign-off will be carried out by JBA, so they have independent oversight and auditing responsibilities within this process. Following installation, we'll offer you an annual MOT. We recommend that's carried out every 12 months. That will include a maintenance check and any advice if there's been any changes or modifications to the property, which may also then allow for further potential flood ingress points, which may need to be further addressed. Next slide, please. So, property flood resilience, the measures and choices. This scheme is funding the resistance measures. However, we can advise on recoverability measures suitable for your properties as well. We as Watertight do not actually manufacture any products, but we provide an extensive range of solutions from partnering manufacturers, which are all fitted by our own qualified, experienced, and employed installation teams. So all our solutions are bespoke, certified, and fit for purpose. We adhere to industry best practice and always act impartially. We don't favour any particular suppliers of equipment, materials, or services. So it's all about tailoring it to your property, your needs, and your requirements. As per the industry code of practice, we always seek to ensure that the specification and deployment of property flood resilience is proportionate to the risk of flooding at the property and also considering the resources available, taking into account the requirements of the end user while maintaining a large degree of flexibility and common sense. So next slide, please. So I just want to talk about some examples of PFR products which will be available to you through the scheme. In terms of doorway protection, this generally falls down to two main types of products, which are flood barriers and flood doors. In this example, this is a flood barrier. It demonstrates the flexibility of the system. It's a modular system. As you can see in this, we've been able to span both sides of the conservatory. Next slide, please. Just some further examples of barriers. These are obviously with the panels deployed. If you look to the left-hand photo, you'll see that the rail on the left-hand side of the barrier system has been powder coated to match aesthetically with the frame of that doorway. So we're trying to reduce any visual impact of measures that we supply. Floodgates are another measure, which are suitable for protecting doorways. You can see in a couple of examples of how they've been applied to two doorways in these example photographs. Minimal works required and aesthetic impact to allow those to work within those doorways. We then come on to flood doors. So these are some examples just demonstrating the range of styles, colors, and choices that will be available to you. There's a number of different door designs, and then you can further personalize them to your own tastes with colors of door handles, letterboxes, door knockers, and any other door furniture. There's also a range of glazing options, so you can make them your own. Just another couple of examples of flood doors. In the image on the right, you'll see that we can actually provide flood doors to cater for wider openings. That's a set of French doors, also incorporating side lights. So we can provide flood doors into most openings as well. Air bricks are another potential ingress route. We can address these with smart air bricks. They have a float inside them. So in the event of a flood, they close off automatically to prevent water ingressing through the wall. Next slide, please. And vent covers are another common measure that we provide. Probably see from the images, they're fairly self-explanatory as to how they operate. You simply deploy them over the existing vent. Non-return valves will protect any drains, pipes, services from backflow flooding, prevent water potentially overflowing from a toilet or out of a washing machine, dishwasher, or shower. Next slide, please. And then pumps would be another measure that we provide. Some pumps are primarily for suppressing water underneath suspended timber floors, if your property has them. Virtually every property is also provided with puddle pumps, which can pump from low level. So if there is any ingress or seepage anywhere, they can suppress that, pick it up and get it out of the property to minimize any damage. So frequently asked questions. The most common frequently asked question is, do I have to pay anything towards this? This scheme is being funded by the Environment Agency, and it should cover the majority of properties. As Tom mentioned, if there are some aesthetic upgrades that you wish to avail of, you may be required to make a contribution for those. Will it affect my ability to get insurance? The answer is no. It will actually benefit you in being able to get insurance. Flood Re is available to all homes which are owner occupied and built before 2009. Another common question is, will it put my house in some sort of bad list in terms of either insuring the property or potentially selling the property? Again, no, this will not. PFR is being mainstreamed. It will enhance your property. So how can I be sure Watertight will do a good job? Well, JBA have to sign off on a post-installation flood risk report, and they produce the report which is sent to you at the end of this process. The Environment Agency also have oversight of all the works that we propose, carry out and install. So what if I change my mind after the survey? There's absolutely nothing to stop you deciding not to go ahead with the works following the survey. I would stress the survey is free. Really nothing to lose by allowing us to come carry out our works inspection survey and discuss any options available to you. So long as you don't sign the homeowner agreement, we won't proceed with any of the works and there'll be no charge. So how do I book a survey appointment? We are aware that a lot of people in the scheme have already actually had surveys, but if you haven't, please do reach out to us either by phone or email. There'll be a following slide with our contact details on it for you. And finally, can I speak to you one-to-one with any questions? Yes, of course, absolutely. That's what we're here for. Please do feel free to contact us via the contact details, which are about to be provided, or book the survey, and we're happy to come carry out the survey and answer any of your questions at the time. I would say, actually, if there's anything specific about your property, these are usually best dealt with at the time of a works inspection survey, so that we can see and advise on whatever the specific needs and requirements or concerns you have are in relation to the property. Next slide, please. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. These are the contact details for my colleague Curtis Skip. If you have any questions or queries, please reach out, and as I say, these are also the contact details if you want to get your survey booked. So that's everything from me. I'd now like to pass you over to Beth Jones from JBA. And thank you all for listening.
Hi there, thanks David. So my name's Beth Jones and I'm from JBA Consulting. So who are we? So JBA Consulting is a flood risk and engineering consultancy. We've got a number of offices across the UK and internationally, and we specialise in anything water related really. So flood hydrology, modelling, engineering solutions, and most importantly in this case, property flood resilience. Next slide, please. So just a few introductions. So I'm the project manager from JBA, and you'd be seeing me on site. And I'll probably be accompanied by Holly or Stefan or others from the team, but there's some likely faces that you'll probably see. Okay, so our role in this process, as it's been stated before, but we're involved in the very start and the end of the project, and we act as independent flood risk assessors. So at the start of the project, we'll complete a desk-based flood risk assessment. So we'll use all that information that the Environment Agency hold, look at the flood models and any information that they have, and we can carry that out before we attend site. And then we come along with Watertight International to complete the independent property flood resilience survey. So during that time, we'll look at options, identify the best options for you and your property and the flood risk. And then from that, we'll be able to produce a report in line with the Environment Agency's requirements. And then at the end of the scheme, we carry out the audit of the measures that have been installed, and from that we can produce the post-installation audit report as well. So next slide, please. So now I'll just go into a bit more detail about the various steps of our process. So with the initial survey, 3 main steps. So first of all, it's to complete an online questionnaire. So details of those that will be sent out to residents. And then step 2, we carry out the survey at each property. And during this visit, we discuss with you the flood history, property construction, identify any water entry points and options that are appropriate for your property and you as the resident, and discuss those as David. And then step 3, we write up the survey report, which will identify a range of options and recommendations for property flood resilience measures. And that report comes out to you as the property owner, but it's first agreed with the Environment Agency and Watertight International. So step 1 with the questionnaire. So as we've already said, a number of you have already booked in your survey appointments. That's really great news. And so if anybody has already provided their contact information, we'll be able to send out a link to our online secure portal, where you'll be able to access JPROP, which is JPROP is the portal itself, and then from there you can fill in an online questionnaire for us, which is just really useful before we head out to site, because that provides us with the background information that's just really useful, so we come prepared. But if you don't like using the internet that much, then we can always send out a paper copy of the questionnaire as well. You can request that by using the contact information on the slide, or you can contact Watertight International and they'll be able to pass on the information and we can get that sent out. And this is just what the portal will look like when you log on. Thanks. So step 2 with the survey. So during the initial survey, our surveyors will discuss your experiences of flooding. We'll go through the flood history and what you've had, particularly with your property, and then we'll collect all of that information, talk about the property construction, And then we'll identify all the water entry points around the property perimeter, take lots of photos, lots of measurements, and that will all inform our recommendations then. So next slide. And then when we come to produce the survey report, it's confidential to you and your property. It won't be circulated wider, but that will then include details from the survey and also from the detailed desk study that we carry out as well. And that will include all the information about the property. So your property details, flood history, we'll do an assessment of flood risk, and then that will lead on to property flood resilience recommendations as well. And then as the final step, as it's been mentioned, with the post-installation audit, once everyone's happy with the measures that have been installed, and Watertight have identified that, you know, it's all installed correctly, we'll attend to carry out a post-installation audit. So we'll go along, we'll check the measures that have been installed, make sure that everything's present and correct, that you're aware of maintenance and storage requirements. We could talk about emergency plans, that sort of thing, and then discuss as well any concerns you might have. Generally, they'd be quite quick to put to bed. And then from that, we can complete the post-installation audit report. And again, that's in line with the Environment Agency's requirements. And that will be issued to you. It is something that you can provide to your insurers, as David rightly said. You know, the whole point of this is to hopefully help with insurance and provide that reassurance as well. And in lots of cases, it's then able to help improve premiums or enable people to switch insurers as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Beth. I would now like to introduce a recorded interview between Mary, Donna, and Sue Chalkley. Mary is a very experienced in the flood risk industry. She was CEO of the National Flood Forum from 2006 to 2010, and now holds a similar position for Know Your Flood Risk campaign. Sue Chalkley is a resident of East Peckham and has had great success with a self-funded property flood resilience scheme. Working with a builder, Sue has implemented a suite of measures that include resistance, that limit water from entering the property, and also recoverability measures that speed up the recoverability if water does enter the property. Just be mindful that the Shrewsbury scheme will be providing resistance measures only. We'll just try and play the video.
As has been said, I've been flooded myself on quite a few occasions, and I did make my home flood recoverable because it was virtually impossible to keep it out. And when I did flood, I was able to mop it out, sanitize, and get back downstairs again very quickly. And since then, I've been a passionate advocate. That was 20 years ago for PFR, and I'm so delighted that it's now mainstreamed. You can see these pictures of the sandbags. Most people we see on the telly when they're flooded are dashing for sandbags, and local authorities are delivering sandbags. They don't work. This is an excellent example of sandbags not working. They filter the water, so you get clean water in your home or your business, but it doesn't stop the water from coming in. So can we have the next slide, please? These are some fabulous photographs that I've gathered over the years of property flood resilience measures, such as those that Gareth has been talking about, working in anger. And I particularly like the ones that I've said that I've highlighted, because you can see the sandbags not working, but actually what we can't see off the photograph is the pair of red dry shoes, because that particular property hasn't flooded. And you can see the garage above that just not flooding because the measures have been working. And you know, I commend them to you, and I hope you'll all go ahead with this. But what about recoverability, which isn't covered with this scheme, but it's something that you might want to think about, that you could self-fund. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. I have travelled around the country for the last last couple of years in partnership with the Environment Agency and Flood Re. And I've interviewed about 40 homeowners and businesses to find out what they have done to A, try and keep the water out, or B, help the homes to recover more quickly, with really positive stories to tell. I visited a lot of properties that were sort of challenged last February. And because of the measures people have installed and because of the recoverability, they were either didn't flood at all. This one of the properties that I went to visit said that he was on flood warning for 3 years on the banks of the River Aire in Leeds, and they had more problem with their incontinent cat than they did with the river raging past their home for 3 weeks. And so they're really passionate advocates. If you want to read more about this, and you can follow me on, if you're on Twitter, it's on my pinned tweet, and I commend it to you because it's real people doing real stuff. And also, if you're not on Twitter, you can go onto my website. It's on the front page. It's marydonau.co.uk, DHONAU. But in a couple of weeks, it's going to go to .com. So if you go on to .co.uk and it's not there, go to .com instead. So what I'm going to do without any further ado is hand over to Sue Chalkley, who is well known to you all, I'm sure, because she led the I don't know whether you still lead it, the Flood Action Group. And I did actually come to East Peckham to celebrate the opening of your reservoir flood alleviation scheme many years ago. And Sue is going to talk to you. I'm going to hand over to her because she's a professional, talk to you about what she's done at her own home level to reduce the impact that a flood can have and also enable her to recover more quickly. So thank you for listening to me, and over to Sue. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. I'm not sure I do know everybody actually, but for those who don't know, I live in Solhatch. We've lived here since 1988, so we've been here a while. And we flood mainly from the belt, from the Colt Stream and from the Bourne and from runoff. If the Medway floods significantly, we would flood from the Medway as well, but mainly that kind of Pinkham and down in the village. So our first flood experience was in 2000 when we were flooded a few times during the year, and then in October 3 times. And as a result of that, we went into temporary accommodation. And we really knew nothing. And the insurance company were great, and they put the home back like for like, and we just thought it was a once in a blue moon experience, and we kind of would get on with our lives. And so we moved back in the autumn of 2001, and then that New Year's Eve there was another massive flood. So we were only at home for 6 months, and everything was ruined again. Kitchen came out again. I think we bought 3 kitchens from the guy at B&Q who knew quite well because we've been back and forward so many times. And that time, I think, having only just got back in and lived through, I think if you've been flooded, worst bit actually is after the flood. During the flood, there's a bit of a dread pumping and the neighbours around, and it's afterwards when you're just constantly dealing with the really complex project management all day long on the phone, waiting for people to answer the phone, just trying to sort everything out, which goes on and on and on. So anyway, the second time we decided we really didn't want to be put into temporary accommodation. We wanted to stay at home and supervise the work, but because the ground floor was stripped out and dehumidifiers were in, we actually lived in the loft, and we did live in the loft, and we lived there for 9 months. It wasn't brilliant, but it was better than living somewhere else. We were able to supervise the work, and the insurance company was great, and they allowed us to appoint builders that we knew and that we trusted, and they were just fantastic because they just used their common sense. They'd say to us, do you really want to put it back like this? Why don't you do it like that? And very often it wouldn't cost any more, and I'd ring the insurance company and they'd say, that's fine, do it that way. So as an example, the first time all of our electrics were relayed under the floor, and then we flooded again, and we thought, no, we don't want any electrics down at that level. So we don't have any electricity below about 2 foot. And and all our sockets and everything is a bit higher, and that's absolutely fine. And actually, as you get older, it's quite convenient as well. They put floodgates at all our doors. We just had simple floodgates that were made of wooden frames with tongue groove boards that we dropped in and wedged in, and then when we flood, they swell up and become more or less watertight. But because our floor was, when you've been flooded, you kind of know where the lowest point of your house is, because that's the last part to dry out. That's where the puddle remains for the longest time. So while the floor was up, we dug a pit and put a submersible automatic pump in there. They don't cost very much. They're only, well, I think they're about £60. But anyway, we put a pump in. What do we else? So we also dug a trench around the outside of the house that was 18 inches down and 18 inches out, so kind of L shape. Literally just laid that blue heavy-duty polythene that you see. Then we put paving stacks against the wall and rendered it. So we kind of slightly tanked the outside of the house, but our house is 200 years old, so it kind of just leaks and water just appears from, I don't know, it just appears to the floor. And then we had a new build, we had an extension built, and we put extra high thresholds. So you have to kind of like climb out of the house to go out. And there's a few other things we did, like the plaster didn't go right the way down to the floor. We had high skirtings. Anyway, the main premise that we were working with, that we knew that water would get in. We couldn't stop it getting in, but what we wanted to do was to keep it to an inch or two. We felt if we could keep it to an inch or two, we would stay in control. And so with the measures to slow the water coming in, and then the pumping it out, and people say, well, what's the point? Because you're surrounded by flood water. Actually, as long as you're not flooded for too long, and we tend not to be in the village, it's usually about a day at a time, just pump it out into the flood water. And that's what we did. And then in 2013, there was a major flood on Christmas Eve. And it was just amazing, actually, because all of the measures worked. We just had a slither of water through the house. We kept ourselves busy by sweeping it into the pit. We didn't really need to, because it would have gone into the pit anyway, but you just, I don't know, you just nervous energy, you feel you need to be doing something. It was astounding, really, because Christmas Day, we were eating our turkey. Couldn't believe it, just really, really couldn't believe it. And so I would really advocate putting in measures to protect your home, whether it's resilience or resistance or what, anything you can do. And I always remember Neil Gunn from the Environment Agency saying to me once, you put a roof on your house to protect it from the rain, why wouldn't you do something to protect it from flooding? And I'm not in any way letting off the government or DEFRA or the Environment Agency from doing the bigger measures, because I think we need those too, but we need to protect our homes. So it's kind of a bit of both, the capital work and us doing what we can to protect our homes. But the main thing really was just, actually, I think we felt just euphoric that we'd had a flood. It hadn't been a crazy panic, because the water was coming in so slowly and being pumped out, that we were able to move things that needed moving. We've become quite experienced at it over the years. The slight worry for me now is that we've had another extension built, and until that's tested, I don't know whether the works we've put in there will work, but hopefully they will. We've got a downstairs shower now, so we have a non-return valve. It's just interesting to see, but I think that's all I wanted to say about our experience. Yeah, slow in, fast out, that's my motto.
Well, thank you very much for that, Sue, and I'm sure you'll all agree how powerful that was, to be flooded on Christmas Day and still eating your turkey on Christmas Eve and eating your turkey on Christmas Day. And many of the stories in my ebook are exactly the same. And I hope that what Sue has said and what I have said and all the other speakers will encourage you to take up the grant. And I look forward to hearing how it's all gone ultimately. And good luck to you all. And let's all hope it works for you. Thank you very much.
I hope that video provided you with a bit of insight into people that have installed sort of properly flood resilience, and obviously the benefits they provide compared to other methods such as using sandbags. And apologies if the video went a bit small in the corner of the screen, but hopefully we're still able to hear it loud and clear. Before we move on to questions, I just want to highlight a few key bits of information just to take away from the presentation today. So firstly, please note down shrewsbury@watertightinternational.com and send an email to sign up to the property survey and property works inspection survey. Also, you can use this email address to contact Watertight International directly with any questions you may have. Following sign up, remember that Watertight will be contacting you to arrange a 1-hour survey during the 18th, 19th and 20th of October. You can stay up to date with the latest information with a dedicated Shrewsbury PFR website, which is www.shrewsburypfr.com. We'll be posting a recording of this webinar onto that website as well. When your measures have been designed, please be prompt in signing your homeowner agreement, as we cannot order measures without this, so it's to minimize delays. And finally, we're about to open the floor to questions, but if you have any questions you would rather discuss offline, please get in contact with the Environment Agency at inquiries_westmids@environment-agency.co.uk, or you can use the Watertight email address above as well. Just for today's questions, please keep them about Shrewsbury PFR scheme, and any questions directly related to your property or individual circumstances, just send us an email directly and we'll get back to you in due course. If there's any questions. So I think there's no questions coming through. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. As I said before, if you do any questions do come to you, if you're watching this in the recording online, please use the email addresses as stated above. I think we'll bring it to a close. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.